You guys love the opportunity to buy undervalued assets whose price action is completely devoid of fundamentals. It happened in 2008. It happens in liquidation events always when markets crash and everything falls with them. Good quality, bad quality, that stuff does worse, but the good quality stuff comes down too. And that's when you look back and say, wow, what an incredible opportunity that was to get into an asset with incredible fundamentals. Well, if you do, then you must really be enjoying times like these when we have a great unwinding of financial stimulus. All assets across the board are crashing together, including tech stocks, which are massively underperforming the rest of the market because their valuations can't be supported in an environment of tightening monetary supply. Not that tech isn't great, but there are other assets which are even more undervalued, especially in times like this. Let's talk about uranium, nuclear news. Let's first dive into the price action on the week. The Sprott Uranium Miners ETF is down 6%. Let's compare that to the broader market. NASDAQ down 0.76%. But zoom out, right? We're long-term investors. Let's look at what happened over the last year. The Sprott Uranium Miners ETF was down 2.87%. The NASDAQ composite was down 12%. So once again, proving to be a better store of value in this type of environment, which we are going to absolutely cover what type of environment this is. But you can see on the daily chart that uranium and NASDAQ are all trading together in line with the risk asset curve. And so if you look back at my prior videos, you will remember that I called for the S&P 500 to crash down to around 3,800. Looks like it barely got there before we got this rebound. The reason why we need this sell-off is because this is the fastest tightening of monetary conditions in US history. If you look at the spiking rate of change of interest rates. And so why have markets been able to pump so much over the last few decades? Because interest rates have cratered for the last few decades, causing the cost to borrow to go down and all assets that you use to buy borrowed money with to go up. So this is a regime shift in the market. They're trying to fight inflation. They can't do that without increasing the cost to borrow. So this is a completely different environment. I still think we get a choppy stock market like this. I think it just goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Not a fun time to be investing at all for most assets. Very low returns, similar to the 1970s, last time we had geopolitical distortions, supply chain disruptions, spiking interest rates, and out of control inflation. And you can just see in this current stock market, the S&P 500 just looks ready for a rocky period. Like we're just entering that type of environment. That's where we are. And so uranium stocks were a casualty of that. And we're just going to get some volatility. But what's great about times like this is you get to take advantage and buy the highest quality assets on weakness. So let's dive into uranium. Why is it high quality? What are the fundamentals behind it? Well, first, let's figure out what's going on in the United States, the world's biggest economy. New polling from Pew Research shows support for carbon-free nuclear is growing among Republicans and Democrats. That is bipartisan support. This is an indicative chart of where we are going in this country. The United States wants to invest in nuclear power infrastructure. States are leveraging nuclear energy for bipartisan climate progress. There's no time to lose. According to the latest intergovernmental panel, we are falling short in our efforts to mitigate the climate crisis. State policymakers are leaning across the aisle to chart their own paths to net zero emissions. To accomplish this, many are reevaluating the benefits of nuclear energy, which is uniquely suited to playing a pivotal role alongside wind and solar to help the nation and the world make substantive progress toward reducing emissions. So the United States is going to incentivize uranium mines to produce nuclear fuel. The only way to do that is to raise the spot price of uranium and to pump money into this market. And so that is what the United States is going to do. But this comes at a very, very interesting time as you look globally and realize that the US is not in a vacuum. Move over to the EU. The EU's uranium question. Nuclear power provides around 25% of EU electricity and 20% of its uranium fuel is imported from Russia. Sooner or later, it will come under pressure to look for alternative suppliers, meaning the United States, Canada, Australia, suppliers not completely influenced by Russia and the Eastern Bloc, and it's more expensive to get it from those regions. And so the price has to rise in order to incentivize this new fuel source as global supply chains shift. So it's almost a no-brainer to expect the spot price to rise just on that. And so when you realize how quickly these European countries have to move away from Russia, you have to look at the geopolitical situation and what's unfolding with Russia. This news story came out this weekend. It is absolutely massive. Not enough people are talking about this. Putin warns Finland has made a mistake after country's president tells him they will join NATO, despite Russia's threat to wipe them and Britain out in seconds with nukes and turn US into ash. Kremlin says West has declared total hybrid war. So what is this going to do to supply chains, to commodities, to resources? There's going to be a global scramble to acquire as much as possible to shore up supplies, because these are vital resources, particularly uranium. Putin said abandoning neutrality would be a mistake since there are no threats to Finland's security. The collective West has announced a total hybrid war on us. The consequences will be felt by everybody. Russia does not bluff, right? They're going to do something drastic. This is going to change everything. Finnish president told Putin about NATO's plans in direct and straightforward phone call this morning. Pro-Putin MP fumed. If Finland wants to join this bloc, then our goal is absolutely legitimate to question the existence of this state. This is logical. He added that the US would be reduced to nuclear ashes if it threatens the Russian state. So this is worst case scenario. Look at the Russian capacity of uranium and what comes out of there. We have 14% uranium raw material. They do 27% of the conversion in the entire world. They do 39% of the enrichment. They're a uranium powerhouse. If they become the enemy of the world, then the asset we rely on them for will have to spike, and it's going to spike because of this. This is all coming at a time of severely constrained supply in the places where we need to get it out of the ground, not Russia. The world needs new uranium mines, depletion of in-ground production inventory. Many forget too that uranium mines operating today are being depleted and must be replaced. But with inflation driving up costs, we know inflation is out of control because of this geopolitical turmoil, because of natural gas and oil supply chain problems. But with inflation driving up costs, uranium prices must nearly double to $80 per pound for lenders and miners to give green lights for new mines that will take many years to build. So this is a long-term story. Look at this chart. The world needs uranium mines. So right now we are in the depletion phase. 2021, 2022. This is the pounds that need to be brought out of the ground. But right now it's too expensive too. And so we have to go back to this chart, which is showing, this is an old model, by the way. The light blue line at the top is the demand. The bars are the supply. We've been in a supply deficit for many years. We're entering one now. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse. This is an old model, which doesn't even take into consideration that Russian resources are no longer going to be considered a factor on the world stage. Or it's likely that they won't be considered a factor on the world stage. And so we have a structural supply deficit. There's not enough being produced in the places where we need to get it from. And so the price has to rise, especially in an inflationary environment where it costs more and more and more to get this stuff out of the ground. It is a perfect storm for commodities, especially uranium investors, because uranium has a scarce above ground supply. And so if we look at the spot price of uranium, we're getting a massive dip in indiscriminate selling. And so obviously it could go further. Obviously, there's liquidation events, but you guys tell me if you think this is a good buying opportunity. Everything is pointing in that direction. Will commodity stocks ultimately diverge from the rest of the market? It's happened before. It could easily happen again. We will stay on top of these updates in this extremely exciting time. This discussion is for informational purposes only. Please consult a certified financial planner when making any decisions about investing. And do your own research before making any decisions. Investments are risky and you can lose lots of money in them.